So many people don't really understand the value of using a data tool like Airtable. So I'm just going to walk you through a few simple examples of how valuable a tool like this can be. And Airtable is just a tool of example. You can use many other tools and do the same exact thing. So I'm here in Airtable and I'm going to create a new base. This is Airtable terminology, but it's basically, think of it as like a space, right? So I'm going to start from scratch. And the idea of a tool like this is you can upload your data, and you see over here, you can easily upload CSV, Excel, Google Sheets, etc. And you can build out, think of it as, you can build out a spreadsheet. However, there's additional value than just having a spreadsheet, and I'm going to walk you through that now. So obviously we have a template over here where it's just like name, notes, assignee, but all this you can change. So I can call this, for example, locations. And I can decide what type of data do I want to store in this column. Do I want to store text, a date, a phone number, an email, etc.? Let's leave it as a single line of text. Over here, notes right now is set to a long text field type. So that means I can write long notes, maybe even have formatting. So I can have like rich text formatting. So I can hyperlink it, etc. Assignee allows me to assign specific users. I can build out different users here. Status allows me to have different statuses. However, I can actually customize the statuses. But all this as an example. So you can build out any field type. Let's say you want to track all of the locations of, I don't know, a nursing home that you have, right? And so you can build out location name. And this is in this column, you'll put the names of all your locations. We're going to delete this column of notes. We're going to delete the assignee field. We're going to delete the status field. Instead, we're going to add an address field type. And if we don't have an address field type, we can also, let me see if we have an address. So there's no address field type in Airtable. SmartSuite, by the way, which is a competing product, does have an address field type. But that's not a problem. We can add a single line of text to track the address. So here we have an address field type. Now we might want to track the phone number. So we can have the phone number, we call it phone number, and we can track the website of the location. And you get the idea. You can basically track any type of data, and you can start filling out like location A, give it an address, give it a phone number. And phone number, by the way, you'll only be able to put numbers, and website, you'll only be able to put a URL, and so on and so forth. Here's where the power comes in. I can have a separate table. So I can create another blank table. And let's call this table vendors. And in this table, I can easily track the name, contact information, and services of different vendors that I might have servicing particular locations. So I can, let's give this a name. We're going to call this company name. And over here, we're going to want to know their email and their phone number. And let's say their website. And let me show you something interesting. I can add an attachment field type and store their contract here. And I can add another attachment field type and store their NDA. And I can also track the types of services that they offer. I can set up a multiple select, and I can call this services. And now I can say, let's say this is like some sort of nursing home vendor. I can say this primary care, wound care, and so on and so forth. You can add over here, dialysis, optometry, etc. And basically you can build out all your vendors. You can upload their contracts over here, and you can select what type of services they might offer. Here's the more powerful piece. You can now link to another record. So now I have table 1, which is really basically all of my locations. Okay, so let's just pretend these are nursing home locations. I have another table of vendors. I can set up a linked field type between vendors and locations. So I'm linking to locations, and we're going to call this locations. And then I can choose if I want to link records to multiple, link record to multiple records or not. Let's just say yes. And let's just leave this for now. So we don't necessarily want to look up any fields. Actually, I did look up by mistake a field here. I'll delete it. And now we get to pull in locations and link them to vendors. So I can now start correlating and tracking which one of my vendors is serving which one of my locations. And I can either pull up a vendor and look at all the locations that they're servicing. And I can click in to actually see the details of the location. So I can see all the information that I store on the location. Or on the flip side, I can go back to locations and now I see my vendors. And so I can now track each location, which vendors are associated with it, and click into the vendor to understand the details of the vendor, what type of services the vendor offers, and so forth. I can also start filtering and setting up views. So let's say I want to look at all vendors who are wound care. I can say, here's all vendors have any of primary care, or let's say wound care. And this view will only show me my vendors that have wound care. However, the data is still there. So I can set up another grid view with no filter or an opposite filter where all services have any of primary care. And now I can name this view primary care vendors. And I can name the other view wound care vendors. And you get the idea. You can twist this and shape this any way you want, right? So you can now start looking, you can also like group based on any field type. You can have a filter that says, show me all vendors who have a contract signed, or on the flip side, don't have a contract signed. So you can basically have a view here that says vendors with no contracts or pending contracts or vendors with no NDAs. And you basically say, if here, I can build that out right now. Instead of the primary wound care, we're going to go into filters and we're going to say if NDA is empty. And so this will show me any vendor that does not have an NDA file in the NDA field type. If the vendor does have a field type, as soon as I attach a file here, it will disappear from this view. However, I'll be able to find it from this view. So essentially the idea is, instead of storing your files in Drive and then making like a spreadsheet of all your vendors and a spreadsheet of all the buildings and then having separate sheets to try to correlate like which vendors are servicing which buildings. And again, obviously, again, this is an example, right? If you're in a different business line, you can imagine different type of, you can correlate your customers to plans that they have with you or products that they bought. The idea is that, you can build out tables that have their own unique set of data fields that you're tracking, and these are data validated, right? So phone number, you can't just type in text or it won't save, right? The idea is that each one of these fields is data validated, and you can only type in a number. In the number field, you can only type in a website, and then website field, and so forth. And then you can actually correlate between different tables. So you can correlate products to customers, vendors to locations, and so forth. And then you can build out filters and groupings and basically different views that show you your data in different ways. I'll show you another advanced piece, which is you can actually build out a calendar. So you can look at the same data. Instead of looking at it in what's called a grid view or a spreadsheet-like view, you can look at it in a calendar view as long as you have a date field. So if you add a date field, maybe this is date of service, or whatever, the date that you started working with particular vendors, or the date that your customer bought a certain product. Now I can set up a calendar view. And in my calendar view, suddenly you see these records over here on a certain date, and you can create new records from a specific date where the date is already pre-filled. And as soon as I add that record, if I click in, I can see the full record with all the other information, and that record will now show up in my grid view. However, you can look at the data in a different way. and there's a whole set of other views that you can look at it in. And so this is, people wonder sometimes like, hey, why can't I just keep my data in a spreadsheet or an Excel sheet? Or what's the value of using a data tool like Airtable? Well, there you have it. Would love to hear your thoughts and comments. Would love to hear different use cases. And if you have a specific use case you want me to like walk through or show how to build out that specific use case fairly easily, feel free to leave it in the comments and I'd be happy to try to make a video on how to build out that use case.